In today's show, we ask the question, which Blazer will be most improved next season? Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richman. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. Coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. As Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's program, we are going to attempt to answer the question, or at least walk through the thought experiment, which Blazers player will be most improved in the 2025-2026 season. That's next year. Yes, indeed, we are looking ahead. Despite losses from Sacramento and Dallas, the Blazers' postseason odds remain very long, and instead of getting caught in the tankathon standings, we're going to look ahead a little bit in today's program. So what I want to do is talk about what it means to be most improved, kind of how I measure it, how I want to talk about it, how I want to think about it, and then talk about the players who are likely to do that. And then we'll close the show with a pretty simple look, once we get all the way through it, at what player making the biggest leap would change the Blazers' outlook the most, or perhaps a better way to say it is change the Blazers' eye level the most. Like who making a leap would be the most impactful on where they stand and where they could potentially stand should that leap take place. But let's talk about kind of what I mean by most improved player. If you're a long-time listener to the show, you know that if I had an MIP vote, I'd probably vote Norman Powell. Ty Jerome would be on my ballot. I think Cade Cunningham is going to win it. Most improved is a weird award in the NBA. It's now given to the player who kind of reaches the highest level. It's not most improved. It's improved to the highest heights. And certainly Cade Cunningham is awesome this year, and the Pistons are awesome this year. But he was pretty darn good, at least production-wise, a season ago, obviously on a terrible team. I don't think he's undeserving of it, but it's not really how I view the award necessarily, and maybe how I view the award is largely unimportant. Point taken. When I'm thinking about the Blazers, I am thinking about this in the same sort of vein. It's not necessarily who can improve to the highest level. It's who can take the biggest leap relative to where they are now. And so why Norm would get my vote is because he's having a career year at 31. He's better than he's ever been. Ty Jerome was out of the rotation. And now he's out of the league, minimum guy on the fringes to very, very powerfully important bench contributor on one of the best teams in the NBA. Cade Cunningham is an all-NBA type on a surprise team that's going to make the playoffs in the East, and you can't really... I've really enjoyed Cade's season. I don't think he's undeserving of recognition. He just wouldn't be my MIP vote necessarily. But when I'm thinking about the Blazers, I'm thinking about it in the same way. From where you are relative to where you're going to go. That, to me, is most improved. So really when I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about five guys. The obvious is the most recent trio of draft picks in reverse chronological order. That would be Donovan Kling, Scoot Henderson, and Shaedon Sharpe. But I'm also thinking about the Blazers' best two players this season. Danny Avdija, who is just turned 24 in January, and Toumani Camara, who will turn 25 in May. Those guys aren't particularly old, but I think those are the players most likely to be on this list of most improved. There are other young players on the team, albeit with some more experience, who certainly deserve to be in this conversation. Anthony Simons could improve. Anthony Simons was better last year than he's been this year. If he just gets back to where he was a season ago and shoots 38% from three, yeah, he would. That would be a significant improvement, right? He would jump from being a 19 a game scorer to back in that 22 range. That would be a big deal. And he shoots a high enough volume that shooting the difference in 36 and 38% from three is it's a notable amount in the box score in terms of when taken over an 82 game sample. You're oh yeah, he's a dude who scores 22 a game. He could really score. A dude who scores 19 a game, okay. We draw funny lines here, and certainly Ant could improve there. I think DeAndre Ayton is in the same boat as Anthony Simons, where it's I I think there's an argument to be made, although, like, obviously DeAndre's second season in the league was derailed by a suspension for violating the league's drug policy, and he wasn't very good that year. But, like, his last 2 years in Portland have certainly not been as good as his final 2 years in Phoenix. Some of that is for Ayton is just, like, playing with better teammates in Phoenix than he has in Portland. But, like, he could improve just because, like, we've seen him be better than he has in Portland. He hasn't been very good on the whole for his 2 seasons in Portland for sure, although he's had his moments. But guys like that, like Ant and DA, will be entering their 8th season in the league. I just don't see NBA players as very likely in year 8. It's not just age, because every time it's like, sometimes, and I'm guilty of this, is talking about them like they're old. They're not old. You know, Ant will be 26 next year, and same with DA. Like, they're not old. They're young. They're young players in the grand scheme of like where they are in their physical prime and development and et cetera, et cetera. But like, guys typically in year 8 in the NBA don't make big jumps. So I wouldn't put them on my short list. Jeremy Grant is enough older that he wouldn't even be in this consideration, although like the idea that Jeremy Grant could be better next season seems pretty easy if he just remembers how to make 2-pointers on literally any shot inside the arc. If he can make layups again or make mid-range jumpers again, he will be better than he was this year, because he's just like been so bad on 2s that it's like to see him improve. But so really when we're talking about improvement, we're talking about the sort of young quintet. I think you could throw some other young guys, like maybe Jabari and Ryan Rupert if they're back and part of the plan, and same with Chris Murray. But like I wouldn't count on any of them making a significant leap, in part because they just don't have a clear path to like big time minute playing time as opposed to some other players. Although they certainly could be part of the rotation, and like there is a lot of unknowns here in terms of who is actually going to play and when. And I think the Blazers will make some changes this offseason. So some of this is it's operating under the same thing that I've been doing recently, which is the do nothing theory, which is like, if the Blazers do nothing, how good could they be in the future? And that's kind of what I'm thinking here. Obviously, the Blazers are going to do something. They're going to make a draft pick, probably just one if they make one, but they're very unlikely to have a second round pick. That one is not. They're not, due to the protections owed to them. They're just not going to end up with it. Shout out to the Hawks. So it's like they're gonna have a lottery pick of some flavor, depending on probably where it lands. It'll be whether they make the selection or not. For my money, they should absolutely make the pick. Add another young player, but we'll see kind of how that goes. So like they're going to make some changes, but in theory, like, or in practice, I've been talking about the do nothing. Like, what if they don't do anything? They could still, they could be a pesky like team that challenges for the playoffs, et cetera, if everything breaks right and their players improve. So this is kind of in that same vein. Assuming these guys improve and the Blazers, like assuming they do nothing, what you're banking on for them to take steps forward is internal improvement. So I'm kind of obsessing over who could, or at least like I'm very interested in who could make big leaps. It's obviously the young guys. Quickly, like, Donovan Clingan's improvement will almost exclusively come on the offensive end. He is not a good offensive player at all. He just doesn't have a way to score right now. Doesn't have post moves, is not a great pick and roll player, is not a leaper to be an above the rim finisher on pick and rolls, and probably won't be just because of his athletic profile. He'll need to develop one move, probably a right-handed jump hook against switches. That's like a simple thing that you can drill. And it's like when they put Josh Hart on you, take Josh Hart take the Josh Hart size guy on the post, and you'll see many teams will put centers on non-shooters and then a wing on a center that they're not afraid of. Right now, they're not afraid of Klingan. Be able to mash when they put a small guy on you. Be able to mash with a right-handed hook. Catch in the post. Be 7'2", put it over the top. He doesn't have that right now. And I think he can be a good passer, but he just like, because of the way they guard him, the passing hasn't been a thing that's like a big part of his arsenal yet. But it could be. His improvement will come there. For Shaedon Sharpe, the improvement is probably on defense, because I think he has improved on defense this year. There was a time when he was really awful off the ball, but I think in part just him improving, and in part probably Chauncey Billups benching him and saying like, dude, you're not going to play very much unless you like focus a little more on that end. Certainly that's coach gets credit for maybe inspiring a little bit there, and I think Shaedon's just general getting more mature as a basketball player and a person probably has helped him a little bit as well. And those things are probably intertwined in a way that you can't really separate them. But like he can improve a lot on defense. He has the physical tools and the frame to probably be a pretty darn good defender, although I don't know that he'll ever be like a high-level defender based on just where he started, but certainly he could be. And like the shooting, right? 3-point shooting. And I think some of the 3-point shooting for Shaedon is just like being a little more judicious with the shots you take, like taking less off the dribble step back threes, more catch and shoot stuff, being more decisive. Like, I like him taking mid-range pull-up stuff, but I think sometimes he can be indecisive in the mid-range. And it's like when he's plays with a more decisive speed, even if you play slow, but it stays low and then loads up into layups, he's really good. Stays low and then pulls up into jump shots, getting a little space with the getting separation with his jump. Like, he can be really good there, and he's a really good jump shooter, and he's a very, very good finisher. So I think the improvement for him comes on defense and the jump shooting, and also just like being a little more dialed into, like, I've got to switch. I'm going to attack because that's what I'm best at. For Scoot, it's a lot of things. Like, I think he's improved enough as a shooter that a big change for Scoot would make, or a big like development for Scoot would be like to take this level of shooting that he's been at, flirting with like league average, and like just up the volume by about 100%. Like, just like, can he shoot 7 to 8 threes a game at this volume? He doesn't need to like try that right away. I don't want him to chuck that many threes a game. In fact, I think Scoot is like a little bit too much in love with the jump shot right now. But like, if you're talking about overall improvement next season after a summer of working, that is a space to get to. And I think he can improve as a defender. I think he's taken big strides this year, but he can still get there. And then the finishing is the big thing with Scoot. That's the big thing for him. Like, it just make layups at an above average or even a league average level. He's going to be a much better player. His best skill right now is keeping his dribble alive, getting past someone, keeping his dribble alive, and making plays for others. He has a knack for it, but if he was a little more dangerous as a shooter and a lot more dangerous as a finisher, the way he gets guarded would change things, and then he would help all of his teammates. I mentioned the young guys. What I haven't mentioned is Tumani and Denny. I think they've been the Blazers' best players this season, and I think they have room to grow. Let's talk about them in the second segment, because I think when your best players get to even higher heights, that is maybe the thing that is, push it. The top-end talent is what the Blazers need, and what if their best players reach top-end talent? Let's talk about that in the second segment. First, though, let's talk Monarch Money. You ever look at your bank account and you're like, hey, where did my money go? Maybe you're, eating out a lot, or maybe you're just having fun, a little bit of entertainment out on the town. You're buying stuff in various online retailers, and you're having trouble just keeping track of where your cash goes. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. It's not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. Monarch Money can track all your accounts, all your investments, and all of your spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. I think one of the real nice things about Monarch Money is that the app can help you set your goals, and it can even help you divide your goals, like your savings goals, into various piles. So you can say, here's my short-term goal, I want to buy this item. And here's my long-term goal, I want to save up and buy a house. I want to save up and get a condo. And so when you're using Monarch Money, you can see it all right there in front of you, and you can put your short-term, long-term, medium-term, whatever it might be, goals right there, and you can be on the same page with what you're bringing in, what you're sending out money-wise, and where you want to go. And you can stay on the same page without the stress that comes with thinking about your finances. Take control of those finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA. You can get 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com. That's monarchmoney.com, and the code is LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Today's program is also brought to you by the good folks over at Prize Picks, who are making it fun to get in on whatever action you want to get in on. Baseball season is in full swing, and maybe you want to bet on a team with a starter's ERA below 1. That's your beloved Colorado Rockies, or maybe my beloved Colorado Rockies, who have just 1 win on the season, and their 4 starting pitchers have given up just 2 runs by the time you've heard this through 4 games. They've been excellent, but they keep losing. But that's the type of thing that you can get in on Prize Picks. You just pick more or less on a 2-player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. So whether that's strikeouts, RBIs, how many runs starting pitcher who plays on a purple team in the Rocky Mountains gives up, or if you want to mix and match, you can play baseball, you can play NBA all through the playoffs, and you can mix and match sports when you're making your lineup. You can set that lineup in less than 60 seconds, and when you win, the payout is quick, safe, and secure. So download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right. We talked about the improvement of the youngsters and where it's going to come from. But I think one of the conversations here when we're talking about who's going to be the Blazers' most improved player next season is like, we're talking about the distance traveled. That's big for me, the distance traveled from where you are relative to where you're going to be. For me, that's what most improved means that. But I think there is the Cade Cunningham part where it's like most improved in the NBA for many NBA voters means what level did you reach? It's not necessarily where you started. It's what level did you reach? And when talking about that, I'm thinking about the Blazers' two best players this season, Deni Avdija and Toumani Camara. Shout out to the Ringer, who still thinks that Anthony Simons is one of the Blazers' two best players. They'll get it one day. They will clue in. I know they make those lists so people like me will turn them into content, but one, I never do that nonsense because that's for them, not for me. And two, I watch all the games. I don't need someone to rank the players on the Blazers. I know that Deni and Tu have been the best players all year, and it ain't a confusion to me. In any case, when we're talking about most improved, there is an idea of if you get to the highest highs, and certainly a big thing in the NBA is just top-end talent, right? I think Deni Avdija is, I don't know the number, right? And I'm not going to cite a list of a certain online media company, but if he were to make a significant leap and become one of, say, the 25 best players in the league, that would put the Blazers in a different spot, right? And if Toumani Camara, who for my money is one of the 10 best defenders in the league, I think Toumani is going to make an all-defense team, in part because I think he's been an excellent defender this year, and in part because the league's weird rules about participation have limited the pool to some extent. At this point, I will be very surprised if Toumani Camara is not an all-defense team member. I'll be disappointed if he is not at least second team, and I won't even be that surprised if he's first team. The Blazers released some fun social media or some fun media today on a website dedicated to Toumani Camara's Defensive Player of the Year campaign. And while that might be a little rich for my blood, the campaign rocks. the content is very cool. But in any case, I think those two gentlemen taking a leap and being the most improved player on the Blazers would really be altering the outcomes a great deal if they took another big leap. The thing for me is that what are we comparing exactly Deni's progress with specifically? I'll talk about two more in a moment, but on the year, if you look at Deni's whole year production, it's not hard to believe that if you look year over year, he'll have a significantly this is the best season of his career. And it's very easy to believe that next season will be the best year of his career statistically. But if you slice it, say from February 1st on or post All-Star break on, Deni has been on a heater, and not even a heater. Deni has just played at a very high level. Some of it is probably there was a period where he was just shooting above 50% from three, and maybe that's a little much. But I think he's playing at a level now where it's just he is. If you're measuring against what he's been post All-Star, that's I think it's unlikely that his just overall production gets better. Certainly there's places for Deni to get better. In fact, I've done 2 full shows on what Deni's path to getting better is, and what an entire show on Deni and an entire show on Toumani on what their path to get better is. And Deni there's meat on the bone for Deni, developing a mid-range game, improving his handle, particularly driving left and finishing with his left hand, improving as a playmaker. He's improved so much as a 3-point shooter and a shooter off the dribble this season. That's just continuing that level of shooting and upping the volume from 4 and 5 attempts a game to 8 and 9 attempts a game. I don't know if he'll ever be a 9-3 a game guy, and also you want him to drive to the rim because that's what makes him really special is the downhill attacking, so you don't really want to take that out of his game. But a little mid-range stuff, a little more creativity to create his own offense and become a better passer, cut down on some turnovers. He has places where he could get better, right? He's played so well that over the last 6 weeks or whatever, the idea that he's going to take this another really big leap seems maybe unfair of an expectation to place upon him, quite frankly. I do think there's a path where Deni is better next year. Like I said, I think his production, just because the improvement he's made throughout this season, and Year 4 was in Washington was Deni's best year. They put the ball in his hands more, and he was much better after the All-Star break. This year, this is the best season of his career, and throughout the year, he's got the ball in his hands a little bit more and made some decisions. I'm not saying that Denny can't improve. Like I'll say it a million times. Like I think there is meat on the bone for Denny. I think there's some low hanging fruit stuff where it's just like if he was a little turn the ball over a little bit less, he's a better basketball player. Like if he becomes a little bit more comfortable taking like one pull up midi a game, he's a better basketball player. If I've heard some people talk about developing his post games, like sure, if he develops like a couple post moves so he can punish people in, such a physical offensive player, yeah, there's place for him to improve. But I just like the idea that he's going to take a massive step because he has been so good over the last 6 weeks seems relatively unlikely. For Tumani, I think it's less that he's like had this production level where it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not trying to say Denny's at his peak or Tumani's at his peak, but it's like there is a production level where you're like, yeah, I mean, like even if you get better, like you've already been so damn good that it's like, what are you expecting? And I think like Tumani is less like the high level production, although he's been very good and he's improved a lot as a shooter in year 2 as opposed to year 1. It's just like, will his skill set as a individual offensive creator, getting his own shot on offense, ever get to a level where it's like his offense takes a big leap? Much like, and I talked about this with Ant, and I talked about this with DA, it's like Denny will be entering his 6th season next year. It's just unlikely he takes a massive jump, but he has improved significantly each of the past 2 years, and so I could see him taking a jump. And Denny just turned 24 in January, and he's about 7 months younger than Tumani, even though Tumani's going to be only entering year 3 next year. So like 2 is a little bit older. I kind of just think typically, guys who are in Denny's experience level are more sharpening their skills than adding skills, although I wouldn't be surprised if like the leap Denny has taken stretches out to 80 games as opposed to 25 or whatever it is. Tumani is like, I think he could get better. He's already an elite defender. I think get a little better on offense, and I think he could, if he could create a little more of his own offense, then he becomes a very special player, right? He becomes a very special player. But in some ways, those like the biggest leaps guys make are in their college age years. The 18 to 23 is much more likely to take a bigger leap than beyond that. It doesn't mean you can't. It's just like where you add the most skills typically throughout an NBA career are there. But again, this is the Cade Cunningham conundrum. Tumani and Denny are better than the young trio. If they would improve a little bit less, they still might stay on a higher rung. If you end up on a higher plateau, you naturally are going to climb a little bit, have a chance to climb higher just because you started a little bit higher, right? You started further up the mountain. The question I want to ask is not about like who's going to end up higher on the mountain. I bet Denny and Tumani will remain better than each of the young trio, at least in next season. I would bet on it. The question is, who, taking a big leap, would change the Blazers' outcomes and the Blazers' eye level the most? Like, who would drastically change the Blazers' outlook the most by becoming this player, the Blazers' most improved player in 25-26? Join me in that third segment. That's what we'll do to close the show. First, though, let's talk Gametime. It's the place for tickets. Going to sporting events has been one of the most cherished moments of my life. I was lucky enough as a child that my father, shout out to you, Dad, took me to so many Carolina basketball games. And look at me now. I yell about basketball in my basement for money. So if you want to give your kid a career, why not go to Gametime and use their new feature Gametime Picks, which filters out all the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. You can start planning for your child's illustrious podcasting career into the future. If you want to go to the Blazers game this weekend, Gametime Picks has good deals. Get in the building for under $20. There's tickets upstairs as I'm looking at this right now at like 11 p.m. on Monday night. You're listening to Tuesday, April 1st show. I appreciate you. There's tickets right now. Get in the building, $16 upstairs. You can sit downstairs right now for under $60. Gametime Picks makes it easy to find good deals right away for stuff you want to go to. Go make some memories, even if it doesn't land you with a job yelling into a microphone. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use that redemption code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Still a pass first point guard, still Mike Richmond, still listen to Locked On Blazers, still thankful for all the experiences my father gave me as a child. Go Tar Heels. Shout out to Ed Cota, Ademola Okulaja, Eric Montross, and I guess even like Adam Boone and Chris Lang if you're really into it. I think the challenge for the Blazers is they're banking on internal improvement. And when I'm doing this exercise of do nothing, right? Like I know they're not going to do anything. I just like the off season is so long that part of me is this is like self-preservation. We will talk so much about the off season and trades and roster movement and all that stuff. When the year ends, it's going to be a long off season. We'll get there. So part of me is thinking like the do nothing, my sort of do nothing ethos that I've been going with is like because internal improvement is so important. And one of the challenges for the Blazers is like they have a bunch of guys who they're kind of banking on improving. And what I want to do here to close the show is all of those guys are going to improve some. And, development is neither linear nor guaranteed. Usually the graph doesn't go in one direction. It goes up and down and back and forward and all of those things. But like you're hoping that young players take a leap. And the Blazers like quintet of intriguing young guys that seem to be the sort of long to medium term core of the team, excepting obviously Anthony Simons and DeAndre Ayton in this, that seem like maybe medium timers that were maybe one time considered short timers, but could be here for a while. Although if I had to guess, I bet the Blazers will end up trading Anthony Simons this summer, in part because they should have traded him last summer. And, they'll finally clue in to the thing that they should have done, or maybe they'll like really commit to it. But what I want to ask here is like who taking leap would change the franchise the most. Some of this is like banking on what I talked about in the second segment. I don't really know how much I think Deni Avdija can improve. Like I said, he can get better, but I don't know that he can take like a massive leap. If he does, hell yeah, like the franchise is in a great spot. I just think he's playing so damn well right now that like, I'm not saying this is his absolute peak. I'm just saying like, how much better do I really think he can be from a guy who averages like 23, 9, and 5? That's a freaking great basketball player. And like Tumani, I don't know that his skill sets will catch up with him in a single summer, although I do think he could become like, he's such a good defensive player that like just getting like a little bit smarter on offense would get him there. So I don't think those guys are likely to make the jump. But if they did, and I wanted to use this as the exercise here, this is arbitrary, obviously, but what I want to do here is as the exercise is like, if you assume that everyone else on this young quintet makes a 5 to 7% increase, but the person that you say would be the most impactful takes a 57% increase. You see how I'm doing that? 5, 7, and 57. And what does 57% improvement even mean? It's all nonsense, right? This is all arbitrary. This is a real Monday in March ass podcast. But that's why Chris Lang got a shout out here, y'all. In any case, I don't think it's Donovan Clingan because I don't think Clingan improving that level gets him to a point that is a franchise changer, right? It's like he's so far away on offense that even a leap like that, like he's really, really good on defense. He has some limitations as guarding in space and stuff, but he's such a good rim protector. He's such a good drop big already. And like, you see like, okay, he's at his peak. Like he is like, best rim protector in the league level is like what his ceiling could be, right? Like even just based on this year, he's already so good at that. It's like his limitations are on the other end, and it's like and maybe like versatility on defense that doesn't allow you to play him enough to maximize the gifts as he has as a rim protector, right? So I think even if he were to improve that 57% as opposed to 5 or 7, it doesn't change the Blazers' altitude that much. Deni would be is in the conversation. I don't think it's 2, just because I think his level of offensive skill is not quite there. That even that big of a jump wouldn't change the latitude too much. Although it would obviously be very impactful, very helpful. So I think what we're talking about is like Deni, Scoot, and Shaedon. And for my money here, the biggest whose leap would be the most meaningful, I think it would be Scoot. In part because of how good Deni already seems to be and how good Tumani already seems to be, and because I think Shaedon Sharpe improving a little bit and just like changing his shot diet a little bit, he could be a pretty good offensive player without taking a massive leap. Obviously, if Sharpe became like a very good three-point shooter or just more like judicious with his three-point shots and more really, really, really good as a downhill driver. And some of his stuff with Sharp is like his handle isn't very good. And if his handle improved, he could get loose and take less mid-range followays. He could get loose and stop, quote-unquote, settling for jump shots because he just like could get past someone a little bit. And he's such a strong finisher that the ability to get past someone or like move, stop, counter, and drive like it would be very good. And I think like he is closer to being a very good offensive player with, or at least a darn good offensive player. Very good might be overstating it, but a darn good offensive player with minor improvements. But Scoot taking a leap seems to change the franchise to me the most. And in part, it's because of what I've talked about, sort of the Cade Cunningham thing. It's not that Scoot would reach these highest highs. Scoot improving by this arbitrary 57% number doesn't make him as, I don't think he'd be the Blazers' best player at that level. I think he'd still be something like their third best player. But he would help everyone. In fact, everything would make a lot more sense. If Scoot is like clearly a very good, or at least like darn good, like capital G good, without any qualifiers other than that capital letter, a darn good starting point guard, then everything becomes easier. Because Tumani is a good cutter and because Shaedon Sharpe is a good cutter, Scoot's gifts there help them succeed. Getting Denny off the ball and like getting him in his spots with someone who's like competent, like as a floor general and as a shooter, and Scoot has obviously taken strides as a shooter, and we're assuming that he continues to take those strides and ups the volume. He continues to change it, become a high level or at least a above average to good finisher around the rim. This would be the leap we're talking about. What most improved player would be the most impactful and change their altitude. It would also just be informative on the future of the franchise. I think Scoot's style of play as a connector on offense, as a natural playmaker and a natural sort of share of the basketball, a great just like simple pass maker. And if he cut down on turnovers and could finish and make layups at a higher level, added a little mid-range game, continued to shoot at this sort of league average and slightly above from three, but on higher volume, all of a sudden you have a really good point guard that complements these athletic wings that want to play fast with a point guard that wants to play fast, and the vision becomes clear. For my money, Scoot Henderson's leap, in part because of where he stands now, would be the most impactful on the Blazers' altitude, on their outlook, and on their eye level for next season. Obviously, other players improving would be valuable, and in this exercise, we're assuming everyone else improves 5 to 7%, so you're getting better players around him. The young players are still improving, but Scoot takes the leap, and to me, that would be informative both in the immediate and the long term, and it also would just be helpful because of Scoot's style. That's your most improved player show. I think this is something to revisit because internal development is so crucial to the Blazers this season. If you have a player if you have a player in your eyes, that would be if they're the most improved, quote unquote, under the like stupid parameters that I laid out, that you think would be the biggest game changer for the franchise, and you're watching on YouTube, share it in the comment section below. Just give me a name: Shaedon, Donovan, Denny, Tumani, Chris, Ryan, whoever it might be. Share it in the YouTube comment section, or send me an email with your thoughts at lockedonblazerspod@gmail.com. Much of this show was informed by listeners like you sending me emails and kind of helping me figure out what folks are interested in. It's the best place to have civil conversations with me, and it's the best place to share your thoughts. And honestly, the off season is coming. It's a challenge. Please send me some emails and help me guide the show. This is for y'all. I do it for you, and I try to do the best work I can for you. So, hit me up and let's work together because winter is coming, and by that I mean the long NBA summer. I appreciate you listening. Blazers play tomorrow evening, and they will be without Scoot Henderson, who's going to miss the game. He's already been ruled out, still in concussion protocol. They were going to play the Hawks. We'll talk about the game next time you hear my voice. We will talk all about that one. And I got a fun interview later this week with Jared Dubin from Last Night in Basketball. This is what we do 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, and also on YouTube. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.